Hello and welcome to In the Court of the Wenton Knave. We're doing all of Zappa. This week we are doing Roxy Elsewhere. A seminal moment, a true seminal moment. We've had Lumpy Gravy, we've had Uncle Meat, we've had Weasels Rip My Flesh, we've had Hot Rats, we've had The Grandma Zoo, and now we have Roxy Elsewhere. Famous album for good reason, it is awesome. Recorded before Apostrophe, interestingly, mixed and released after. It showcases the talents of Napoleon Murphy Brock and George Duke and their interplay. Much more so than Apostrophe, interesting. And also it showcases the skills of George Duke as well as Bruce Fowler and Ruth Underwood, Ian Underwood, and also Chester Thompson, interestingly. Future drummer with Weather Report, briefly, followed by Genesis. It was around this time, was the 10th anniversary tour. That was how it was marketed, because I think 64 was the formation of the Mothers, and this was now 74, and they were playing the whole of Freak Out, or at least most of Freak Out. The idea was to play several concerts playing Freak Out, because the fans like it, a bit of retro, you know. There's actually a famous bootleg of one of those shows called Mitigated Audacity, which is on the Beat the Boots box set. And what was significant about it for Zappa was it was amazing just how easy that stuff was to play compared to the new stuff. Because this stuff, we've reached a new apex of complexity here. It's not like there was an orchestra where it's a big orchestral sound. This is tight and staccato. This is very, very tight with sort of staccato passages. They've got to be played exactly right, and they're played. The fact that they're played so well is what makes them very accessible. Incredibly complex music that is incredibly accessible, given just how frightening the stuff is. I think there's different ways of listening to it in a way, because I think I hear it differently because I'm a musician. It's frightening. Its companion album is the Helsinki concerts, which I mentioned before. The You Can't Do That on Stage Anymore Volume 2, and that concert was taken a bit later, so the performances on that album are slightly better. They're faster, and he's also added a few more things to them as well. They got really good at playing them, but this is the famous album. It was filmed over several nights as well as recorded. All those tapes that are still in existence, and supposedly they're going to come out at some point. There's some controversy there when they were going to come out, they didn't come out, etc, etc. There's also the new album Roxy by Proxy, which is some other tapes of this stuff, which is a sort of interim to keep people happy while they work on the video. Very exciting, because this is awesome. It's also interesting what's not on here. Now, the full shows obviously featured Doug Breath and Uncle Meat, as a lot of shows did, as sort of closing numbers. But also, Approximate was from this time, which kind of didn't get released. I mean, I think there's a bit of it on Zappa in New York, but other than that, it kind of didn't get released, and it very much fits in with this style of music. Also, Redunzel, which came out later, was from this period. But also, Dickie's Such an Asshole was a big part of the shows, because it was contemporary of Richard Nixon being impeached and all that stuff, and it's all about how Richard Nixon was impeached for trying to set up a sort of American secret police who could spy on their own citizens. And in fact, although he was impeached, that organisation was never dismantled, as everyone knows now. And that's what Edward Snowden was revealing, actually, was the COINTELPRO organisation, which is basically American secret police. So it's a double album. I don't think it's a very long double album. The start of each side features a bit of chat from Zappa about the next song. The first song is Penguin in Bondage. More vague sexual references to something. It's all deliberately obtuse, so that's entertaining. The track itself is, in some ways, very typically Zappa, but quite easy to listen to. It eases you in, this album. The next track, Pygmy Twylyte, as well. Very typical Zappa melodies, but very accessible, I think. It's quite an easy one, if you like. But that side ends with Dummy Up, which is the other name for the room service routine. And it's quite entertaining on here. It is much more entertaining on You Can't Do That on Stage Anymore Volume 2, which is some really funny stuff on there, with Napoleon Murphy Brock and Zappa. But it's still good stuff. Village of the Sun, which is a song written about his times as a teenager back in Sun Village. Things start to get a bit complicated, but Echidna's Half of You is where it really starts to get complicated, and the syncopated playing of the band is just fantastic at this point. It starts to get really scary. This is intense music, very intense music. Don't you ever watch that thing? Ramps it up even further. It's frightening. It's actually frightening. It is fantastic. The next track, Cheepnis, again, more syncopated, complex stuff, except this time Napoleon Murphy Brock gets to show off his vocal talents, and it's impressive stuff. It's brilliant. So at this point your brain is about to explode. It's all very intense, and Son of Orange County really brings it back down again at exactly the right moment. It just pushes you far enough. Doesn't seem to be anything to do with Orange County Lumber Truck, sadly, but it's a nice piece in the vein of of Eat That Question, that kind of thing. Very nice. And then we have More Trouble Every Day, the follow-up to Trouble Every Day. It's not so much a new piece as a revamped version of the original piece, and a bit more elaborate than the basic blues riff of the original. And that's the version that got played on subsequent tours rather a lot. But again, obviously he's updated his message about stuff happening. The album ends with Be-Bop Tango of the old Jazzmen's Church. A terrifying piece like the others, but also really heavy. I don't think people talk about this. The dun 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 is great. I do think it is suited to orchestral arrangements better. So you got the Yellow Shark version and things like that. But this is still great, and obviously you've got all the fun stuff, and you've got the sort of vocal version and all the preamble from Zappa and all that. Makes it lots of fun. A seminal moment. See you next week.